Good morning. Shana Tova. How's everybody doing? Good. You look beautiful. My first days of rabbinical school at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion were a bit of a doozy. There I was, a California girl in Jerusalem, 8 years past my previous visit to Israel, with Nifty in the summer of 2000, just before the Second Intifada. I had an apartment in the upscale neighborhood of Rehavia, close to campus and, more importantly, coffee shops with free Wi-Fi. I had a great roommate who I knew from LA, a cantorial student, now a cantor, who to this day is one of my dearest friends. I had a great handle on Hebrew, thanks to a superb tutor in San Francisco, who got me solid on vocabulary and verb conjugations. I even had a great group of classmates, people I would connect with and learn from, with whom I would enjoy Shabbat dinners and bond over shared longing for the creature comforts of home. And yet, despite these small victories and the excitement we shared over living in Israel for 1 full year, those first days of rabbinical school were exceptionally challenging. Because it was there that I went from being known as Super Jew amongst my friends and family in LA and the Bay Area, where I went from the one who's always at synagogue, the one who's for sure going to HUC, to someone who felt totally out of place in services, in seminars, in exchanges with native Israelis and tourists alike. I didn't know the melodies to prayers or songs that everyone else seemed to know. I didn't have a history at Jewish summer camp, which it seemed like every single person around me had. I certainly didn't know at that point what the Mishnah was, or who Maimonides was, or what he contributed to the corpus of Jewish practice, or the origins of the first Siddur. And so I felt inferior. I felt less than, less knowledgeable, less experienced, and thus less worthy of being a rabbinical student. In a time when I should have been soaring, thriving in her natural habitat, I felt constantly, painfully, out of my comfort zone. It took a few months for me to realize I wasn't alone in feeling a little out of place, and even longer to gather that for many, this was a standard part of the rabbinical school acclimation process. I came to terms with the reality that my rabbinic training would include a total breakdown of my adolescent understanding of Judaism in order to rebuild it, brick by brick, from the foundation upward over the course of 6 years. Now, looking back on my time at HUC, quite honestly, I would not have changed a thing. But I will tell you, I remember that feeling of inferiority quite well. I remember the feeling that others were more Jewish than I. And I remember the moment I finally stopped comparing my Jewish practice to that of others, when I let go of this ideal way of being a Jew that simply wasn't as meaningful to me, when I realized that I had to be comfortable in my own skin and own my sense of Jewish authenticity. It was, as Oprah Winfrey might say, an aha moment. And now, it's time for you to have yours. I've served this community as an assistant rabbi for over a year now. It's been an extraordinary year, and I've learned a lot. But if there's one common trope that I've heard echoing through every corner of my rabbinate, it's from the 7th graders I've prepared for B'nai Mitzvah, to the 20s and 30-somethings of the tribe, from the parents of religion school students to countless guests within this sacred space. It's this: I'm a bad Jew. What do I know? I'm a Hebrew school dropout. Don't judge me, Rabbi. I never come to shul. I'm not very knowledgeable. I'm not very religious. I'm not the best Jew on the block. Of course, the source behind each statement is different for every person who has shared it with me. Age, diverse life experiences, and varied systems of internal personal judgment, they all play a role. But I believe that there is one common external factor that causes these phrases to at times be uttered by progressive Jews. The same motivator which caused me to feel so badly about my level of Jewish knowledge after I'd signed on for 6 years of seminary and moved halfway around the world to pursue a career as a rabbi. It's that somewhere, somehow, many of us got this idea in our heads that the proper way to be Jewish, that the right way to be Jewish, is somehow synonymous with a more traditional level of practice, with adhering to a strict observance of mitzvot, keeping kosher, knowing the Bible inside and out, observing Shabbat every week without fail, and possessing a deep reverence for God. That failing to do these things means you're not good enough. That choosing a life that doesn't include that level of practice might make you inauthentic. That not automatically possessing or knowing certain things about Judaism somehow makes you ineligible to begin learning and exploring them at any age. Well, I'm here today to tell you, on the first day of this new year, that not only is that wrong, it is heartbreaking, and it's time for it to end. Of course, many of us know it's not quite that simple. Those of us for whom these words ring true know we cannot snap our fingers and suddenly feel a surge of genuine confidence in our Jewishness. Besides, we have no communal, agreed-upon way to measure our Jewish involvement. It certainly doesn't help that we are living in a time when denominations of Judaism are so deeply divided from one another, where individuals within Reformed, Reconstructionist, Conservative, and Orthodox communities are regularly pitted against each other, loyalties questioned, observances challenged, divisiveness the name of the game. It certainly does not help that Israel, our Jewish homeland, has spent the better part of the last decade watching its government become overrun by an Orthodox hegemony. As Rabbi Stanley David's former chair of ARTSA, the Association of Reform Zionists of America, wrote last week, the coalition government of Israel has stripped away any pretense that a non-Orthodox Jew can ever be given full equality or recognition on its watch. And in return, secular and liberal Jews are increasingly protesting against a government they understand to have no concern for them. And it certainly did not help when earlier this summer, Israel's Minister of Religious Affairs, David Azoulay, a member of the ultra-religious Shas party, publicly stated that he could not permit himself to say that a Reformed Jew was a Jew. His statement unleashed uproar, and rightly so, from Jewish leaders throughout the world, calling into question his legitimacy and position within the government. Yet his message lingered, and it stung. Has it always been this way? Have we collectively constructed a fabric of Jewish identity where those at its center are the only ones who can feel good about their level of practice, while those closer to its fringes must routinely feel inferior? In the prologue to his 2000 book, Jew versus Jew, The Struggle for the Soul of American Jewry, Samuel G. Friedman paraphrases the Talmud in the following statement. Jews came to believe that the Second Temple in Jerusalem was lost less to the Roman siege than to their own sinat chinam, baseless hatred for one another. In other words, deep dissent between Jews led to the destruction of our central space of worship and communal belonging. It would take nearly 2,000 years before we would call one place, Eretz Yisrael, our spiritual home again. But here's the thing. Something fascinating happened when the Second Temple was destroyed. Judaism was forced to adapt. Thrust outside the city limits, cast out into the great big world, Judaism faced modernity, and thus began a centuries-long evolution of Jewish practice. From the development of rabbinic Judaism and the invention of the Talmud, to the dawn of Jewish thought and philosophy, to the creation of hybrid cultures like Ladino and Yiddish. That's how Judaism survived over thousands of years, with the threat of persecution looming behind every corner. When the pioneers of the Reform movement began their quest to integrate Judaism into 19th century German culture, they were called heretics, sacrilegious, guilty of bastardizing the most sacred tenets of our beloved tradition. And yet what they were doing was continuing a 1,000-year-old tradition of evolution and adaptation, attempting to make Judaism relevant for the next generation. And while some of their methods might have been a little extreme, their intention was to continue a process of ongoing revelation that began way back at Mount Sinai. Today, here in Greater Seattle, this temple is deeply involved in that process of ongoing revelation. We are a community that is constantly evaluating how it can be more inclusive, welcoming, and present for those seeking deeper meaning in their lives, those who yearn to grow as individuals through Judaism. We are a synagogue that experiments, that plays and engages with our traditions and our rituals, reinterpreting them, bringing them down from the mountain to you because we know how powerful they have the potential to be. Even this beautiful new machzor, embraced by a huge percentage of Reform congregations throughout North America, is a symbol of our ability to merge the old with the new, the sacred words of our traditions with fresh interpretations for a new era. We witness every single day the tremendous opportunities that present themselves in a progressive, egalitarian, inclusive community. We feel the empowerment, the confidence, and the love one can have for Judaism and their fellow Jews. And so I ask you, what could be more authentic than that? We know that there is no one right way to be Jewish. I thought I knew that coming out of HUC, but now with a full year as a rabbi under my belt, I have really come to understand what that means. There are multiple options and countless pathways into Judaism, and the process by which we interact with community is different for every single one of us. For some, a more traditional level of practice makes sense, it works, it's familiar, and it's rich with significance and purpose. For others, a progressive path is a more open, sensible, and meaningful approach. But both these ways, and so many more, are legitimate, are purposeful, and they are authentic. Of course, one's community can only meet you halfway. To engage Jewishly, to feel empowered, to learn and to grow, and to shed insecurities and our various deeply rooted feelings of perhaps being bad Jews, requires that we believe ourselves to be worthy, that we be willing to invest the time, and that we choose to seek out that which is open, available, and meaningful to us. That is how we welcome Jewish authenticity and empowerment. So this coming year, one of the pathways toward deeper engagement is something you're going to be hearing a lot about in the next few weeks, and you will likely be receiving a postcard about it on your way out of the sanctuary later on. Our Aliyah of Belonging, an interactive and comprehensive online portal showcasing the many facets of temple life and an incentive program to deepen engagement throughout the community. An Aliyah is a chance to ascend, to elevate, and we invite you to go up with us as we embark on this extraordinary new project of experimentation and exploration, playing with new pathways into this centuries-old tradition. It is not the only way, but it is one of the many ways that we can each step forward this new year and reclaim a sense of confidence in our decision to be a part of this sacred Reform community. Years ago, back in those early days at HUC, it was hard to shake a feeling that I was doing something wrong or that I'd somehow missed the boat. And that led me to feel insecure and inadequate in my Jewishness. And yet, I pressed on. I kept learning, I kept questioning, I kept engaging. Because deep down, I knew that there would always be more to learn, more to do, more to experience. But to be comfortable in my own skin, to feel authentic, I had to own my Jewish practice and beliefs as they evolved. This coming year, we as a congregation will have countless opportunities to learn and grow and experience the richness of a progressive Jewish life. May we, as individuals and as a community, be brave enough to learn from one another, to engage genuinely with each other, to tread different pathways we have yet to walk, to blaze our own paths, and embrace our own authentic selves once we find them. Shana Tova.